welcome to the Filipino Martial Arts of Escrima, also known as Arnis de Mano, and Kale. The Filipino Martial Arts, one thing that keeps them all in common is, number one, is that they all teach with a bladed weapon, sticks, and the empty hands. Many of the martial arts in the Philippines derive from the type of weapon found within a province or a locale within the Philippines. Within the southern Philippines, they would have heavier type weapons, so they would be using heavier strokes. In some places, because of the type of weapon, agricultural knives, they might use a different way of using it. Some would use heavy chops, others light. Now, the safety factor within all the martial arts is that they normally will start you out with a stick. Even though they're teaching you as a bladed weapon, they will be working with a stick and using the strokes basically as an edge weapon. Now, just to give you an example of some of the knives used within the Philippines, you have what is known as the butterfly knife. Knives like this would normally be used within the cities. Many of the Filipinos would carry these for self-defense. Later on, they teach actually how to use these for self-defense purposes. So more or less, this would be called a street knife. Another weapon is known as the dagger. The dagger itself would be, again, mainly used by Filipinos that are, again, in cities or in built-up areas where they don't carry large weapons. The dagger is normally a double-edged weapon where you can be used for slashing and thrusting. To show you the difference between two knives, here we have two choppers. One is basically an agricultural knife that is basically used for chopping. The other one is the same type of knife that has a sharp edge on it, or a sharp point, which can now not only be used for chopping, but it can be used for thrusting. A system that basically uses a knife like this would be usually a chopping type system. A system like this would be chopping and thrusting. Now, the way blades are put on a knife also can mean the difference in how the system is used. This blade right here is wedged in. As you look into the handle, it is done no more than by wedging it into a piece of wood, which is the handle. They normally put blood, and what happens is the blood coagulates, and then the knife is just wedged in there as a form of glue. A weapon system like this would not be using centrifugal force. In other words, circling motions or anything like this, because you might lose the blade. Other weapons that are made strictly for war would be something like this, copied after the Moro Kris. This type of weapon now, the tang goes all the way through the handle, and it's bolted on the end. This type of blade is very hard to lose. So one good thing about this thing is now you can use circular motions. So systems that have knives like this would have more intricate patterns. In other words, called the umbrella systems, where you just swing the blade, turn it around. This type of weapon is outstanding because it is made strictly for war. We have a point where we can thrust. We have two cutting edges, so I don't have to turn the hand. Weapons that, or systems that use something like this would probably prefer what is called the fan system, where the blade can just go up and down, and no matter how we hit them, we can cut them. Another weapon is an agricultural tool, again, made a little bit longer. This is a very heavy bolo. Bolo is nothing but the Spanish word for long knife. This one here is an agricultural weapon, and so if we used it, it's mainly used for cutting through jungles and so forth, but the good thing about this is it can be used for combat. It does have a point. Since the blade is heavy, you're not going to be able to use light strokes. Something like this, you would use heavy strokes. So systems that teach with a blade like this, which is heavy, would want to use very heavy chopping strokes. So that does, or this tells the difference between different styles again. This is a war bolo. This one here is now similar to the other one, except this is made for war. It has a guard to help protect the hand. It has a sharper point. This type of weapon can now be used just like the double edge. It's sharp enough where now backstrokes without turning the handle can be done. In the southern Philippines, with the Muslims, the Moros have what they call a kris. This weapon here is strictly for fighting. It's a modification of the Malayan kris, the Indonesian kris, except this is designed for heavy strikes. This is a beautiful weapon, it is strong, and it can sever a man's arm. Systems that use something like this, again, will not have to turn the blade each time they wanted to. And they can just go with heavy strokes, or they can even go with light slashes because of the sharpness of the blade. This is a Filipino kabalang. It's a fighting knife used mainly by the Christian Filipinos in northern Luzon. It's an outstanding fighting knife. It has an outstanding curve to it. Types of blades like this, where the curve is, make a better cut. So systems that use this would probably be using a draw cut. A draw cut is where you can slice and bring the blade across your opponent without having any chance of it sticking into your opponent's bones. It has a nice sharp point where it can be used for thrusting. Since it's a smaller knife, they can make smaller, intricate patterns with this type of blade. Some of the tribes in the Philippines have a heavy blade known as a kantalang. This type of weapon is very strong. Tribes in certain parts of the Philippines still use shields. When we have weapons like this, they are made to directly chop through your opponent's shield, and so they're very heavy toward the front. Now, this weapon here is wedged in again. We wouldn't want to be making circular motions because we might lose our blade. So weapons like this would be used with heavy slap or heavy strokes, striking at your opponent. These are, again, bolos. Bolo, again, just designates long knife. The tang is bolted at the rear. Knives like this are excellent for the intricate patterns used in certain Escrima systems. Now, it is unlikely that in the Philippines a person would carry two bolos of this size. Mainly today, it is taught modern so that you can use both hands equally. And today now, as you advance, you first learn with a single blade, then later graduate to a double blade. In tape 1, we'll be concentrating basically with a stick. In tape 2, we'll teach you with the double sticks. In tape 3, we will teach you with double swords and sword and dagger. These are outstanding blades because, again, they are made with a point for thrusting, slashing. The false edge is outstanding for a backstroke, similar to the bowie knife. This is a Moro weapon again. Again, it is wedged inside the handle. This is one of the best chopping knives in existence, similar to the kukri of Nepal, of the Gurkhas. This thing has one advantage. It has a point and it can be used for a thrust. Some of the Moros would sharpen the back of the blade so that they could come back with a backstroke. But this type of blade is outstanding. It's a heavy chopping knife. Something like this, you would chop through any part of your opponent. His arm, if he put his hand out there to stop the blow or anything like this, which we'll teach you later, he would just sever the arm right off. In other words, here, we no longer worry about where we strike anywhere, and we just lob it off. So systems like this would be using and emphasizing heavy chops. Other knives are strictly used for special purposes. This one here is a Moro beheading knife. And so we won't go into that, but it just gives you an idea. Something like this is used two hands, and there is no system for that except other than just brute force on the back of somebody's neck. Simple as that. Now, in Escrima, Escrima is the Spanish word for fencing. In other words, it's two people engaged in a scrimmage. So the scrimmage is basically with blades. In other words, fencing, sword fighting. So what we'll emphasize here in Escrima, since we use the name Escrima, is the blade. But in the Philippines, the stick is also used. In the past, many Filipinos would use sticks that were pointed. They would fire harden them. In other words, they'd stick them in the fire, they'd fire harden them, put a point on them, and then they could fight with these things. But that was at one time when they had very little metal. And so fighting arts with the stick became known. Many systems today that call their system Arnis or Arnis de Mano prefer the stick. The stick is just as deadly as the blade. In other words, Magellan supposedly was killed by someone, Lapu-Lapu, who was the first patriot of the Philippines, who was supposed to kill him with, some say with a bladed weapon, others say with a pointed stick. And so this is where Arnis de Mano came from. Now, we will teach also with the stick, but the emphasis will be as a cutting weapon. When I use a stick, we will be using it as strokes. In other words, where I would teach you to strike or slash, I would teach you to strike or slash with the stick. So the emphasis will always be as a strike with a blade. Now, to give you the difference on this, in other words, if I was to use this on an opponent, if I was to use a blade, I would not have to use as much force. I could just let the force of the blade, takes very little force to slash through your opponent. And I would just cut with any part of the blade. Since it's sharp, razor sharp, I can go anywhere. I can even hold it against you and just draw slightly and you would be cut. With a stick, it wouldn't do any good. If I came with this part and then tried to pull any of these techniques, nothing would happen. So with the stick, our emphasis is going to be with striking basically with the tip. In other words, now when I make a strike, I would be going for bony areas. Or I would go to the throat, places that can't be protected. Or I would be going to the wrist, where their bone is, or to the elbow, or to the shin, or the knee. Of course, naturally, we can go to the soft spots, the soft areas, such as the groin. But notice how I will always turn my hand. Even when I come up to the groin, I will turn it, as if I had a blade. The same thing. Now, it's true, because we just told you, depending on the system, if I had a double-edged blade, I would not have to turn. I would just have to just bring it straight up and down. If the blade is heavy like this, it wouldn't make any difference. So again, I wouldn't have to turn. But a good idea is to try and turn each time we strike, putting the cutting edge towards your opponent. Again, when we teach you with a stick, it's mainly for safety purposes. So when we give you a stick, we teach you that you're making slashes. Now, when you're actually armed with a stick, then you have to know the difference. In other words, we now have to make our attacks basically with the tip. Now, we can block with the shaft the same as we can with the blade. Now, in tape 1, our main concentration will be with the solo stick, the solo baton, and that's what we'll work with. We'll teach you the basic strokes, the basic vital areas. In other words, we'll teach you the A's through the Z's. As simple as that. We're going to teach you all the basic techniques with the stick, as a stick. In other words, we will not show the difference. The emphasis will be basically as a stick. In tape 2, we will then work with double sticks. The emphasis will be with two of these things and working them in unison. In other words, we're just going to combine everything that we learned in tape 1, and then we'll now use it with two sticks, which now becomes a little harder, because now we have to coordinate our left side with our right side. And in Escrima, we want to work both sides of the body. We don't want to just work on one side. In tape 3, we will work with strictly bladed weapons. We'll now work with, first, with the sword, and we will work with the dagger, working them in unison. After that, you'll graduate, which I've already said, to the double blades, which is the hardest of all the techniques. Also the deadliest. Since we're coordinating our hand and our mind with two sharp weapons, we've got to be very careful that we don't chop our body. So be sure to follow all our instructions in tape 1, 2, and 3, and follow the safety rules and regulations. These are sharp. They are not toys. Many of these knives that I've just shown you here are collector's items. There are actual knives that came from the Philippines. Some of them are very ancient and very old. Now, what can we use? Some of the training things that we'll use is rattan sticks of varied lengths. You can see right here, these are two different types sizes. Some schools will teach with 12-inch, 14, 16, 18, up to 34, 36. The length of the weapon Doesn't really make that much difference in studying. The thing is, you should study with small weapons to large weapons. And if we lose the weapons, then we use our bare hand. Now, where can you get this equipment? Rattan sticks you can purchase basically in rattan stores. And all you do is cut them to length. If you wanted to, as you see here, some of them have burn patterns on them. All you have to do is what they call candle burn. They light a candle and they just turn and rotate the stick. This is the safest method. It doesn't burn through the stick. Other people just take a blowtorch. That's the fastest method, but it's also the worst because number one is it burns too much of your stick and it weakens it. I recommend that you have two sticks. One is your, what we call your show pair. In other words, a pair that you want to go out there and look pretty with. The other one is the pair that you're going to beat on all the time. This is my working pair. In other words, I don't put any ornament or anything else on it. The tape in the center is only to show you. When we actually hit with the stick, we have what we call the butt, right by our handle. We have the point right at the front. We have the shaft. When we actually strike with the stick, we're always going to try and strike with the upper shaft. So when I hit somebody else's weapon, I want to hit up here, not down here because it becomes too close to my hand. Now, you might not have a rattan store by you, but there are, any hardware store, you can buy wooden dowels. They come in different sizes. Now, the diameter is up to you. If you're a huge person, you'd want a larger diameter. I myself pick anywhere from 7/8 to 1 1/4 inches. It just depends on the person and how it feels to you. Again, you should practice with varying lengths. You should have sticks from 12-inch. As a matter of fact, you should have sticks from 6 inches. Anything. Because there's times we'll also teach with our bare hand. Other things that you can work with in your training, which we'll demonstrate in tape 1, tape 2, and also in tape 3, are plastic bats, which are outstanding. In other words, you can hit somebody now with very little danger. There is still a danger that you can hurt somebody if you hit them in the eyes. So you have to be very careful, even with plastic bats. Almost any martial arts store has something like this, a shinai. This is a Japanese, simulated Japanese sword, a short sword. And they're made of bamboo that are cut and split. Again, they're outstanding tools that can be used for Escrima or for a stick weapon. This is one that was just made. It's a piece of rattan in the middle with bicycle handle guards or grips. Right on the end here is a bicycle grip, and right here are the foam type grips or handlebar guards that you use. When you use something like this, always leave a little bit of space at the end so if you thrust somebody, you don't just hit them with a hard tip. Other training devices you can use are wooden swords. You can make these yourself. These are made out of oak. These two here. They're made out of oak, and they can still hurt, so you have to be very careful. Things like this, you'd basically be practicing solo, in other words, by yourself when you go through your drills. This is copied after the kris I showed you. This is a wavy kris. The other one I had was a straight kris. To give you an example, you can take any of your favorite knives or any knives that you want to simulate and you can just make the same thing, except in wood. This one here costs a little bit more. The wood happens to be walnut, mixed with tiger wood on the handle. So you can get as elaborate as you want to. Just remember, it still has a point and it still becomes very dangerous. Again, we'll show you how to use some of these tools in tape 2 and tape 3, especially when we get into the weapons. You'll see us use these various weapons here. Now, eye protection is very necessary when you're practicing the arts of Escrima. Whether it's a stick, whether it's a plastic bat, or anything. So eye protection should be purchased. I myself wear safety glasses whenever I do any type of sparring, whether it's slow, fast, or anything. I try and put safety glasses on. Now, what can you wear? Any loose clothing, anything. Any of the martial arts schools will sell from karate gis, even judo gis, or anything else. It makes no difference as long as it's comfortable for you. And that's the main thing. T-shirts or nothing at all at the top. It makes no difference. The thing is the trousers should be loose because we are going to teach you a lot of calisthenics. We're going to teach you how to move and you're going to have to be able to bend. If you can't do something like this, then you're not going to be able to do it comfortably. Now, as my student, what I would want you to do is, one, get your training aids. Get your safety glasses, get your sticks, cut them to length. Make sure you have a nice area to work out in. Make sure that you clear the space. Make sure there's no one in the area that can be endangered, in other words, children, even pets. Then I want you to come out with some enthusiasm. Follow along with us. In other words, start learning how to work that weapon. I'll tell you one thing for a fact, that if you start working here and starting to break wind, you're going to start feeling it. So be very careful. Go through the motion slow. If you have to and you don't understand the technique, replay the tape. That's what's beautiful about this video equipment. We can replay it. Learn one technique instead of learning 50. Learn one technique well. That is more important than learning 50 techniques half well. All it takes, I will be teaching you approximately 200 to 300 moves or techniques within these 3 tapes. There's no way you're going to be perfect in any of them. But if you work on one until you get that technique down, then you'll be able to do it. In other words, we've got to build up our wrist. We've got to build up our forearm. We've got to do exercises to warm ourselves up. We've got to have a little cool down. So everything is important. If we don't feel right, we won't do right. And that's the importance of having nice clothes, something that's loose where we can work at it. So that's important. Again, do not skip to tape 2, do not skip to tape 3 until you learn tape 1. That's the most important. We will teach you the ABCs right from there. And I wish you a happy journey within the Filipino Martial Arts. And again, if you want to, there are many good books on the market. Get them, read about it. Get the martial arts magazines. There are many articles on the Filipino Martial Arts. One of your best assets is going to the library and learn, study, get the history. That's one good thing about the martial arts. You learn a culture. You learn about the people of the Philippines. You learn their language. You learn something about these people. By learning their weaponry, by learning how to fight, we learn how to get along with other people, because now we know the dangers of it. And this is the most important thing. Unity, to get along. We're going to build a sound mind, body, and a spirit. We're going to unite it. We're going to make you escrimadors. Escrimador is nothing but one that is proficient, that becomes an expert. Your first step is to start right at the beginning. No one learned how to spell, nobody learned how to talk, or anything else until they learned the alphabet. And that's it. Tape 1 is the alphabet. Then we'll go to tape 2 where we'll learn the double sticks. Then we'll go to tape 3 where we now learn the weapon, the edge weapons, cold steel. So I hope to have you with as my students for this whole time. And I want to teach you, number 1, how to work these weapons and properly. As with any physical activity, a good warm-up is necessary. Arnis is no exception. If one is proficient in any athletic activity, he or she may want to do their own favorite warm-ups. Here I'll just be doing some of the exercises that I highly recommend. Here we're just throwing our shoulders back, now overhead, to relax the shoulder muscles. At the same time we stretch the rear foot as we move side to side. In Escrima, we'll be using the wrist a lot, and we'll be using the shoulders a lot. Here we have side stretches. Do it slow, don't jerk. The same thing with forward stretch, working the hamstring on the right side of the leg and the left. Do this very slow. You might want to hold the exercise just a little bit longer than what we're doing here. We're just giving you a basic idea. These are known as static stretches instead of jerking the body up and down. Here we're working the side muscles. Again, in the Escrima, we'll be moving side to side using a lot of the torso muscles. Now we're just doing a basic body stretch. The body's twisting to the side. Just throw the arms back and the body will follow. Keep the feet in place. Here you'll feel slight pull on the shoulder muscles, just doing it slightly a little bit different. Here, windmills, at the same time try and look to the ceiling. Keep the body completely relaxed when you do these exercises. Here we're doing the rollovers. Again, stretching the shoulder muscles. Keep your arm parallel to the deck when doing these. Now tighten up. Same time, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. It is important to get fresh oxygen whenever you do any of these exercises, so continuous breathing is necessary. When you inhale, inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth. Again, a form of body twist, working the trunk muscles and the shoulder muscles. Now, to relax the neck and to take out any tension, we just move it forward and back. Try and touch our chin to our chest and hold our head back as far as we can. Again, just move the head as far to the right and far to the left as you can. You can do these a little slower if you wish and hold for a little bit longer time. Now completely relax the neck muscles. Move the head slow all the way around. Don't tighten up. The same thing in a reverse motion. Here we're going to stretch the leg back. Pull up on your foot. Keep the flat of the foot up. Push the knee down. Again, anytime you want to do a certain exercise a little bit longer, go ahead and do it. If you are athletically inclined, you might want to do a little harder exercise. A forward stretch is an excellent exercise. Here we're going to stretch the back of the leg muscles. This also teaches us to maintain good balance at all times. In Escrima, you're going to be learning lunges. So this exercise is excellent. Again, try not to bounce up and down. Here we're going to work the side muscles of the leg. Here, try and hold as far down as you can. Try and touch your buttocks to the deck if at all possible. Lean forward to keep our balance. In Escrima, we use a lot of wrist action, using the forearms and the wrist. This exercise is bent wrist, just bring it back and forth, up and down, shoulder level, down to the belt level. Working it diagonally. In Escrima, we work both sides of the body equally. When you first learn, you'll probably be learning with three. You'll learn with one side, but then later on you will learn with the other side. The routine that we're doing now is approximately 10 minutes long. That is the minimum for any workout, for warm-ups. Again, you can do it longer, depending on what type of shape you're in. This is the absolute minimum. Here, hold your fingers back. Stretching, stretching, stretching. Loosening up the wrist muscles and the tendons in the wrist. Making circles with your hand. In Escrima, we also use the empty hand, so many of these techniques will help you in blocking your opponent, blocking with the open hand. Here, put tension in on the buttocks, grip the deck, and just push in on your fingers. Here you're pushing in on your palms. In Escrima, as we said before, we make a lot of lunges. This exercise is excellent to loosen up your thigh muscles. Be very careful when you first learn this, otherwise you'll be sore, very sore. As time goes by, you should increase the reps in what you're doing here. Completely shake and relax your hands. This is a basic warm-up. In Escrima, one of the most important things is how to grip your weapon. Without a proper grip, we won't be able to hold on to the weapon that we're striking with. Bring your hand as far down as possible when you first learn. Make sure you have a good stick. The stick is just simulating the blade. Catch it all the way to the bottom. You're holding it basically with the thumb and the top two fingers. You're holding it exactly like you would a hammer or a hatchet. Let the wrists go back and forth. Feel the weight of the weapon, natural, going back right by your ear and then down. Draw it down a few times. Good strokes. This is your basic technique. Good strokes. When you're first learning, don't do it with too much enthusiasm. Remember, you're going to be doing this for some time, and if you're not in shape, you could get very sore. So do it very gradual. A second method of holding it is leaving approximately 2 inches protruding on the stick. The extra 2 inches normally will give you a little counterbalance. So many beginners prefer this method. Advanced people, in many cases, will prefer to use the whole stick, and they won't need the counterweight. I highly recommend when you first learn to go ahead and use this method first. Here we're going through some of the strikes. We're going horizontal, head level, horizontal, chest level. Here we're going to show you how to strike. Here we strike with the whole shaft of the stick. When you do this, penetration is not great because you're hitting with the full length of the stick. As can be demonstrated here, the paper just pulls away. The correct way of striking, or a superior method, would be with the tip of the stick. Here we're concentrating all our energy, the same thing as a karate person would be doing if he struck you with the top two knuckles or the edge of the hand. The energy is now concentrated right at the tip of the stick. Here we're trying to strike the paper with the tip of the stick. Now you see that energy is concentrated in it. And what happens to the piece of paper? It completely shatters. We put a hole in it. That's the same thing when we strike somebody else. Again, we're hitting with the shaft of the stick in this demonstration. You notice that the paper just gives way. Again, we now change to the tip, concentrating all our energy at the tip of the stick. So we now find out velocity. Helps. In saluting, as in all the martial arts, a salute is given first. In Escrima it is no different. There are many different types of salutes. Here I will demonstrate the salute that was taught to me at the age of 8. It is the same basic military salute which is taught to the armed forces. Since my instructors were ex-Philippine scouts, they were instructors in the Philippine Army prior to the Second World War, they taught me this type of salute, which goes straight up to the head and then down. There are many different types of salutes. Again, the main purpose of the salute is to give respect and courtesy to your opponent or to the person you're training with. The second reason is that it puts you on a proper defense should your opponent attack you. Those are the primary purposes. What salute you use is not important. It's what you do the salute for that is important. Here we just go through a basic routine. To warm up, catch your weapon, and try it. All techniques should be done on both sides. When we first teach you, we'll basically be teaching on one side. Here, when you first grab your stick, you learn how to just move it and work it in a natural manner. The body is in a relaxed state. As you can see, we can lunge to the side. We can use our footwork. In other words, by stepping. We also use our left hand for parrying, blocking, for deception, for many different purposes. We even use it as a weapon for striking at our opponent. When I say deception, we can also fool them, letting them think that we're striking at them or something else. Here we're now using foot movement, body movement, from front to rear. Here's our basic stance. It's known as a triangle. We stand with our weight evenly distributed on both feet. In this position we can move. We can lunge forward if we have to. Notice the left hand is kept near the heart. This is to be able to parry, block, and defend the heart if at all necessary. Here we're making a lunge, stepping way out. This technique is normally used to get someone that is some distance away. To perfect this technique, you must do it over. Here we're learning to squat. We move from side to side, learning to parry, block. Again, the left hand is used to defend, simulating blocks and attacks. Here we're moving to the right front, giving a diagonal slash. Here we're moving to the left front. Again, thrusting, slashing, striking. We're now going to the left rear. In other words, the body has to be able to change direction at any time, moving in 8 directions. The 8 directions are either forward, back, left front, left rear, right rear. This stance is what we call a crouch stance. Again, it gives you tremendous flexibility, moving from side to side, forward and back. We'll be going more into detail with some of these stances as we go along. Here, the kneeling stance. There are times when you might be knocked down to the deck, lose your balance or something else, or you might be getting up off the deck. So you must learn how to defend yourself in this position. Again, this is an introduction to the stances just to give you the idea of what we'll be doing as we go along here. Here, a one-legged stance, moving from side to side. There are times that you might want to move your leg if someone attacks it. Striking technique. This is the backbone of Escrima, the basic striking techniques. To assist me will be Rod Midland. He's been studying with me for 4 years here. Our first attack will be what we call a vertical down strike. Striking anywhere. It can be from the top of the skull all the way down. It's just a straight strike. You notice that I stand in a triangle stance so that if I come down, I don't hit myself. Be very careful that you do not hit your forward leg. Now, I'm striking with the right hand and I have the right foot forward. This is standard. This way I get maximum reach with that weapon. My weapon hand is forward. Again, each time I bring this weapon down, I stop. I stop by my right leg. You see this? The second strike is coming in the direct opposite direction. We're coming straight up, going from the groin up to the chin. call this technique a spade up, just like I was throwing dirt over my shoulder. All you do is use wrist action. Started by my right leg, comes over by the ear. Just lifting up the weapon, trying to strike your opponent to the groin. The left hand, again, notice, is protecting the center of the body. It just stays there where it's not needed. The second strike is a horizontal strike. It can go high, middle, or low. Here I'm going right to left. High strike, center strike, a low strike. Hip action is used. To get more power, all you have to do is rotate that hip. Make sure you have a firm grip on your weapon so you don't lose it. Again, don't hold it too tight where you choke up on the weapon, and don't hold it too loose where it'll fly out of your hand. There's a happy medium in which you hold it. With enough training, you'll begin to understand this. Here we have a diagonal strike, striking from our opponent's left shoulder down. When I strike, you notice I bring it in a high right upper position. When I come down, I bring it toward my left hip. This is a natural position. When I strike, the stick takes a natural course. Just try this slowly and then start picking up momentum as you feel more comfortable with it. Notice the stick comes right back to the hip. Right by my right ear and then down, right to the left hip, where it naturally stops, ready for another strike if I have to make it. The second diagonal cut is just from the opposite direction. You notice I start from my left ear or left shoulder. When I bring it down, again, I bring it down toward my right leg, to the right of my right leg. This is a diagonal strike. Again, started off slow, start picking up momentum. By shifting the body forward slightly, you get more momentum and more energy in the blow. These are all natural motions. From the left shoulder down to the right leg. The next technique is a diagonal, coming from my opponent's lower left side to his upper right. Here we're starting from our right low position, right by my leg, coming up diagonally, bringing it up toward our left shoulder. Each time I'm striking, I turn the weapons, simulating a cutting edge. Remember, we're simulating that we're using a blade. Again, it comes up to the left shoulder. The next strike is another diagonal strike, coming the direct opposite of what we just did. Here we're starting from our left hip position and ending up by our right shoulder. To get more power, again, use your hip action, wrist and hip. You're using your arm, shoulder, and the hip all at once. When you use and combine all these techniques, in other words, the arm and leg and hip action, you reserve energy, and your arm takes less of a beating. Again, watch how he comes by the right ear, getting full range of motion. Here we make a V cut, cutting from the right to the left in the shape of a V. This is one of the most popular techniques taught in all major forms of Escrima. Now, when I make the strike, it's continuous. There are no breaks in the motion. This is known as the flow. When you can keep your weapon flowing, then it's just natural. Back and forth, over and over. As your wrist begins to limber up, your techniques should be more smooth. Now we're going to do the exact opposite. Of the V, we call the arrow. We call it an arrow because it comes to a point. And now we're coming up toward our opponent's groin, lower legs, under the ribs, into an arrow, into a point. Again, each time I swing, I turn the stick as if it was a blade with the cutting edge toward my opponent. Again, we want that flow where it becomes natural. Here I'm using the wrist, the shoulder, the arm, and body English. This technique is known as crescent and C. Crescent and C. If you follow the motions, you'll see that it looks like a crescent and it looks like a C. It's used for blocking and it's used for striking. This is an excellent wrist exercise. Incidentally, all these techniques you're doing right now are wrist exercises. You do this as part of your warm-up. To be proficient, you must do it over and over. This is known as a draw strike. I hit my opponent and bring the stick, or the blade if it was a blade, back to the hip. We strike out and back. The purpose of this is so if I want to thrust, I have it in a right hip thrust position. Right hip thrust position, where I can thrust if I have to. With training, it becomes more fluent and easier. Strike, return to the hip. Strike, return to the hip. A draw strike. This next technique is known as a circle. Anytime the weapon goes around more than once, it now is called an umbrella. Since it's on our left side, we call it a circle because it looks huge. It becomes a huge circle. This is used for blocking, it is used for striking. And it becomes natural by just throwing the arm out there, relaxed, all the way out. Remember, you have a good grip, but the arm is relaxed so that we can make multiple strikes. Now I'm coming over the right shoulder, an overhand twist. This is known as an overhand twist. When I come more than once, it now becomes what we call the right umbrella. This continuous motion over and over and over, each time simulating a block or a strike at your opponent. There are some systems that are based entirely on this motion, which is known as the umbrella. It is said that true umbrella experts in the Philippines can stop a handful of grain thrown at them by using this technique. Here's the reverse umbrella. Just going in a reverse. At any time your hand starts getting tired, you can, instead of going overhand, use any forward umbrella. We can then reverse it, saving some of our energy, working new muscles. Again, it is important just to do these as exercises. Okay. Now we're using a fan technique. Fan is just bringing it up and down, up and down. Again, notice I am in the triangle stance. The left hand protecting the heart. Here I bring the stick up and down, as if my opponent is in front of me. driving up through from the head down, and also going from the groin up, bringing it back and forth. Getting a natural flow. Now we have a horizontal fan. Horizontal fan can go high, can go low, and normally it would go to the center. It is harder for an opponent to get away from you from the center. If I go high, he ducks the head. If I go low, he raises the legs. But the center, it's hard to move the whole body. So you notice I bring this here. I'm using different levels, going high, then low. Right now, center, low, head, and in the three different directions: upper, middle, lower. Bring it from hip to hip, hip to hip. Fan techniques, you do not change. You just let the stick flow back and forth. In other words, you do not try and get the cutting edge every time towards your opponent. Here, a diagonal fan. Bringing it from the left hip up to the right high shoulder. Again, right shoulder down the left hip. This is natural position, so you bring it back. Natural flow and line of the body. Back and forth. Using more hip action, shoulder action. Now, the next technique is the last diagonal. Going in the opposite direction again, diagonally striking at your opponent. Again, it initiates from either the low right position by the leg to the high left position, bringing it back naturally. Again, triangle stance, left hand protecting the heart, and going back and forth to the right low position up to the left high position. Back and forth. Starting to use more body English. These are the basic strikes taught in this system of Escrima. The next two are known as the cinco taro drills. In other words, the 5 blows. Here we're going to be striking in the pattern of a multiplication sign. 5 different strikes. Here, from right shoulder down to our hip, coming back from where we came, coming up again, returning from where we just struck, bringing it to our hip, and then thrusting. 5 counts. Now count them. 1, going low. 2, striking low. 3, striking low. Striking to the hand. Thrusting. This is just a variance of what we just did. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Count yourself. Same 5 strokes. It's very important that you practice these techniques. 1, like a multiplication sign. Each time, follow this technique over and over. If you have to replay this tape just to get this exercise, this is one of the most important of all the drills. Known as cinco taros. Notice each time I strike, it goes back to one of these 5 positions. Left hip, upper right, upper left, down to the right hip, thrust. Same positions each time. Learn those positions. Cardinal blows. The next technique is another form of cincoteros. It is also 5 blows, except going in a plus sign. In other words, horizontal and vertical. Striking in the center of mass. Striking right across, straight horizontal, return, up vertically through the groin, down through the skull, and thrust. Both these cincoteros are necessary. Here I'm now going to a higher target, but it's the same motion. Here I go low, across the leg, back, it's still horizontal, up vertical, down vertical, and then thrust into the center. Again, this is a very important drill. The more proficient you become at this, the faster, the easier it becomes. For certification in the Escrima, one must learn all these basic techniques. There were 17 different strikes that we taught you here. Plus, we taught you the cincoteros diagonally and the cincoteros horizontal and vertical. To be certified, one must first be proficient in the single stick, 2, the double stick, 3, the sword and dagger, and 4, the double swords. To be certified, all you'd have to do is send in a tape showing that you know these exercises, and certification would soon follow. Again, follow these tapes over and over. If you have any trouble, replay bits and parts of it. Here are the cincoteros, striking, 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 thrust. 5 cardinal blows of Escrima. Not all systems follow the same technique. Thrust. When we thrust, we try and go mainly to the center, but if we have to, we can go up. But notice that the head is only 1/8 part of the body, and we now have a smaller striking area. We can also go for the shoulders, we can go for the groin, we can go for the inner thigh, different parts of the target. So when we practice thrusting, grab our stick and just move. You can put up different targets, different dots in different areas, and try and strike them or thrust at them. The thrust normally is pinpointed. Again, we're going to a certain area of the body and we have to be very good at it. The head, if we strike at the head, again, is only 1/8 part of the body and it's easy to get away. That's why we basically go to the center of the chest. Here I'm just demonstrating why it's hard to go to the face, especially at long distance. Notice I can move the head back to right, left, and it's easier to parry and block. Here I'm parrying with the weapon and with the bare hand. I can also use body movement. Notice I'm now moving the leg at the same time parrying in many different directions. So you practice over and over and over, especially the lunges. By repeating this over and over, we become more proficient, especially as the leg muscles start stretching. We're not talking about one lesson, we're talking about numerous lessons. Here we're learning the thrust, the long thrust, the counter thrust. In other words, our parry and thrust. Lock. Slap with left hand. Now, we first learn the thrusting techniques, now we have to learn our blocking techniques. How to how to use defense techniques against these thrusting striking techniques. Here again, I stand in the triangle. I now bring the right arm out. Notice, the point of the stick is still basically in the same area. When I do this, I'm parrying to the right. We call it a plow because at the same time I'm parrying, I'm thrusting. I plow into my opponent. The left hand is over the heart, protecting the heart. I stand in a triangle stance. Again, notice, this is where those wrist exercises came in handy. Notice I just move the wrist toward the right. The point of my stick is still in the same area. Again, it's like a wedge, like a plow. I plow his weapon off to the right. And at the same time, I counter thrust. Notice how I jam forward, I now move into a crouch stance. Left hand over the heart. I'm standing in a basic, what is called on guard. The same technique used in basic fencing. In other words, the right hand in front of the chest. Now I move the wrist toward my left. But notice again, the point is still centered. This is also a plow. I parry his weapon at the same time thrusting forward. Here you're trying it with your partner. Again, bring our wrist to the left, maintaining the point straight at your opponent's chest. Now learn to move your own body out of line of fire. When he thrusts, shift your body. Don't be afraid to use body English. The left hand is again protecting the center of your mass if you have to block with it. Be very careful that you do not strike your opponent while training, especially with sticks. Here we call it a hanger. I have it in the right lower position, the right lower on guard position. All I do is just raise it. Notice that my stick is just hanging. This is known as a hanger. When I bring it to the left, it becomes a left hanger. Just like here. At the same time, notice I shift the body out of line of my opponent's strike. Sometimes I lean forward, sometimes I lean back. It just depends on what I visualize my opponent doing. Here I bring it straight up and to the left. At the same time, turning my body sideways to make a smaller target. Once blocking this technique in this manner, I can now strike back. As you can see, block and counter strike. Here I lean back. Here I lean slightly forward. By practicing over and over, you get a natural motion. Again, the center hanger. Now we'll go into the same basic techniques, except in a slightly different manner. Here I'm in the right lower guard. I now bring the hanger up to my left high side, left middle side, and left lower side. So there are three areas I want to defend: the upper side, the left side, center side, and the low left side. High, middle, low. High, middle, low. All are hangers, as you can see. The stick is just pointed down. Now, when I turn it off to the left, you'll see that it's out at a slight angle. They are now called fenders. When they now go to the side and at an angle, we call it fenders. So if an opponent strikes at you, you'll be able to knock the weapon off at a glancing blow, the same as a fender on the front of a train. As a matter of fact, that's exactly what the art of fencing is. You're fending. And Escrima is the Spanish word for fencing. So we're fending. In other words, knocking blows aside so that we can strike back. You notice I'm again in the triangle stance, right lower guard. Right lower guard. Somebody strikes to the head, I just bring it up as a left hanger, which now becomes a left high fender, left center fender, left low fender. At the same time continuing to strike at my opponent. That now becomes a circle block. Low left, circle. Now notice I bring my left hand to the left hip position. I can still make the same block. I'm holding it up in the right high position, I can still make the same block. Here I have it in the fencing guard, in other words toward the front, but I'm making the same block. I should be able to make this block no matter where my hand is. Now I'm making the technique on the right side. When I do this, I bring it to the right high, it becomes a high fender, a right high fender in this manner, a right center fender, a right low fender, just doing the direct opposite of what we did on the other side. Now I'm holding my hand in the left hip position. Notice I bring it back around in one of those same blocking positions. Here I have it in a right high guard position. I still make those same blocks, either high, middle, or low, at the same time striking back. Here I have it in a left guard, high guard position. I make the same three blocks, high, middle, and low. Low. Here I have the basic on guard, the hand in front. I still make the same three blocks, either high, middle, or low, using a right fender. Now to demonstrate it. It's a high, I twist, blocking, fending against them, and continuing my strike with overhand twist. By practicing this, you just have your opponent strike at different areas. The more you practice, the more natural it will become. Notice I've got my hand to the left on guard position, and I still continue to make these blocks. Here, an upper right guard position. I make the same blocks. Here I have it toward my left shoulder. I still make the same blocks. Here I have it toward the forward guard position. The same blocks. The name of the game is block and strike, block and strike. Again, if you don't catch these techniques, try it over and over again. Replay this tape and follow along with us. Now, my opponent is striking in any area, as you can see, toward my left side. All I'm now doing is one of those hangers, high left, or anything on any of those blocks. You just try it. Again, my opponent strikes on the right side. He strikes over and over. By following my opponent, I can change. I just have to bring it either to a high, middle, or low position. Here is an overhead block. I'm doing it just like we did the hanger, except the emphasis is that someone is striking to the top of the head. What I do is I raise the stick over the head, and at the same time I strike back at his neck, no matter what position my hand is in. Here I have it in the left hip position. I raise it high, block, strike. Here I have it in a high right position. I should still be able to do the same block and strike. The left high guard position. The same block, high, strike. The forward guard position, high, strike. Block, strike. Left hand over the heart. Protecting the heart. Here I'm protecting the head. Just repeat this slowly and then start picking up the momentum. I block, I strike right back toward my opponent. You may try this from many different postures and stances just to get a basic idea. Now, don't bring it back too far, otherwise he might just hit your body anyhow. In other words, his weapon might glance off yours. Another mistake is by bringing it too low, then he comes over the top. It has to be just right. So if he does miss, he doesn't hit you. Strikes to the head, just follow around. Overhead block and strike. Overhead block and strike. Sometimes you notice I shift more depending on how fast my opponent comes. Here I have it in low right position. Now I bring it up to the hip. Now we're going to show basic blocks. Here we're bringing it up to our right hip position and left hip position. Each time I'm bringing it back. This is a block again. We'll call it like a bumper. In other words, I put my weapon in between me and my opponent. Here we put it pointing up and down, up and down. It's up right up in this position here. Now we come down. Using body English. Here, up high, down low. Here we call it spike up or spike down. The reason for this is if my opponent strikes to the side, I bring the spike up. That way I can strike back at him. All I do is bring the weapon in between him and me. Down, all I do is twist it if he makes a leg attack. When he comes higher, I just bring it up. Now the point is ready to thrust. In this case here, it's like a plow when it comes down. Blade up, ready to thrust. When he strikes down, I'm ready to thrust again. Strikes up, ready to thrust. When he strikes down, I'm meeting him. There we go. The side, down. Side, ready to thrust. That's why it's called spike up. I'm ready to impel him. Spike down, he makes the same attack, but what do? I can follow through with thrust or strike. Same thing, a groin shot. If your hand gets sticky, you notice I wipe my hand periodically. You might want to use powder on your hand or a rosin bag. Here we're now using what we call footwork. I'm hiding each time behind my weapon. That's known as covering. Covering. I cover behind my weapon. I place my weapon always in front of my opponent. I can do it by footwork, I can use it by body English, or a combination of footwork and body English. Here all I do is just move the body behind the weapon, depending on where my opponent strikes. Again, this is known as covering. Covering behind the weapon. Here using footwork. Here I step in what is known as a cross stance, a squat stance, cross stance. Same thing. I'm using body English and I'm using footwork. Each time hiding, using all these different blocks that we used. Using the spike up, using the plow, using the right plow, using the hanger, using the plow, or using the spike up, over and over. You're now practicing. As long as you're using one of these techniques, you're on the ball. After we block, prepare to thrust or strike. Just practice what comes natural. Experiment. Now, two-handed hold, especially with a longer stick, especially for police work, known as baton training. Baton is just a little longer stick, normally held with two hands, especially for riot control. Many riot control people throughout the world use this technique, or these techniques. Here you've got to be able to interchange from one hand to the other, blocking with two hands against heavy weapons, and being able to switch from one hand to another. Again, you notice that we use tremendous body English, body rotation, footwork, moving side to side, hanging onto our weapon, switching from hand to hand. Practice slow with your partner. Here we block strike from any different angle. Block and release. Do this exercise very slow. You should be able to strike and thrust, striking from 8 different directions, from upper, lower, side to side, and diagonal. And against thrust. Do this exercise very slow. Learn to use the weapon at close range and far range. Once you learn how to block from those 8 different angles of attack and thrust, then you're on your way to learning two-handed Escrima or baton. Again, you can have your partner, once you get more proficient, to start going a little faster, striking in any of these different directions. Notice sometimes I stand straight, sometimes back, sometimes in squat. Different positions, whatever is natural to you at the time. This technique is known as a reinforced block. In other words, again, I'm not gripping both sides, I'm gripping one, and I'm using the palm to reinforce the stick with the other hand. This is also used with the blades, where I want to reinforce. I put it on the top of the stick or blade to keep from cutting my hand. This is normally for infighting. In other words, where I want to reinforce, or I want to use strength against my opponent without holding on to the other weapon. Here again, I'm learning from 8 different directions, no matter how he strikes at me. Blocking with 2 hands. This is an excellent technique with a cane. When you have a cane, a walking cane. Again, I'm trying from 8 different angles of attack. When he does cinco taro against me, when he uses any strike, I block with the stick or the cane. Again, picking up momentum as we start training. Here we're now using what is known as dead space or angling. A vertical cut, we can move side to side by just moving the body, or turning the body sideways, which presents a smaller target. If he comes horizontally high, we duck. If he comes low, we can jump over it. If he comes to the center, we've got to lean back. Lean back. So those are ways of evading being struck. Now, when he comes diagonally, it becomes a little harder for us to escape, because now we have to what? We can't jump up, we can't go down. We can't bend in the middle. So what we have to do is really use body English, body angling, twisting that body, so that if he does hit us, he'll hit only part of us. In other words, a less vicious blow. Here I'm using what is dead space. I'm using only body English, twisting and turning. If he strikes to the center, again, I can step back, presenting a smaller target. Now we're using footwork, moving back and back. Now, as my opponent strikes, notice that left hand covers. I can block with it, parry. I can use it for counterbalance. I can use it for deception. I can use it for many different reasons. Now we're going against the 5 basic strikes. Every time he strikes, I'm following. When I say follow, every time he strikes at me, I go in the same direction in which he's striking at me. This is a superior method of parrying or blocking, especially if he has a heavier weapon than me. Notice that I'm following him. Here I'm only using the weapon. Follow, 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 follow. Now I make a hanger parry, and then I strike back. Notice, watch very carefully. I follow his weapon. In other words, I go with the force of his blow, just deflecting it slightly. The left hand is for safety reasons. It's known as the checking hand or parry hand. Some people call it the alive hand. Some call it the sacrifice hand. Sacrificing it before they sacrifice the heart. This is a very important drill. Do it very slow and start picking up the momentum. He's making the 5 cincotero blows, diagonal cincotero blows. Each time again, I'm following him. Notice the flow. Again, play this tape over and over until you get this technique down. Then start picking up the momentum. Once you start learning, pick it up, pick it up. Sometimes you might want to wear gloves to protect your hands. The left hand, again, is known as the sacrifice hand, the parry hand, the alive hand, the checking hand. Here I can use it for parrying or blocking. High, middle, low. High, middle, low, simulating that I'm blocking my opponent's weapon. Blocking it to my outside. Here I go, blocking up across the face. It's natural, it just comes like a palm. That's all it is, palm, slapping it. No force, you just slap it. All you want to do is just get that weapon out of the way so that you can counter-strike. Use body English with it. Notice how I lean back. This gives me time to pull away from his weapon. Try this. Notice each time I block, I now point my weapon toward him so that I can counter thrust. Now I'm blocking to the opposite side. The same thing, high, middle, and low. The 3 areas of attack that he can come. He can either come toward the head, toward the chest, or low.
Again, no force is used. All we're doing is just slightly slapping his hand away, or his weapon. If I can, I'll reach for his hand. If I can't, I'll go to the stick, or his blade, or whatever he has here. Some people say, well, you might get your hand hurt. Better my hand hurt than my chest or my face. And that's exactly what you're doing, slapping it off and at the same time countering. Notice sometimes I lean forward, farther to the right. Depends how fast my opponent comes in at me. Again, I stand in a triangle stance because it gives me tremendous maneuverability and lunging power. The right hand is held in a right lower guard. The left hand is simulating blocks. Now, if he comes the opposite side, all I'm doing is what is called sweeping. I sweep. I follow the blade, in other words. If it comes at me, I follow it the same way. This takes tremendous training and timing. It doesn't look like it. It looks like you're going to be hit. The more you practice, the easier it becomes. I guide and move the weapon away from me so that I can thrust or I can strike back. Again, you try this technique slow and you start building confidence in it. Now, we're going to do what we call bamboo. I lean forward, thrusting against my opponent, and I lean back, getting away from him. This gives me time while he's lunging at me. It gives me time to pull away, and then it gives me time to counterattack. The left hand is moving, simulating that I'm blocking each time. Or I might even use it for balance. Or I can use it for deception. We've already said that numerous times. I can use it as a weapon. I can use it to catch his weapon. Now this is known as the bamboo drill. He strikes, I block, and we move back and forth. The main emphasis is what? Moving the body. Now you notice I move the foot side to side, forward and back. Leaning back over it. When he strikes or when he thrusts, I lean back. This gives me plenty of time to get out of range. And I just slap his weapon away, to the outside, to the inside, whatever is natural. Again, you're letting the weapon work for you. For infighting, you might not lean as far. You start picking up the momentum. Here we're making the V strike. One of our basic strikes. V. In the shape of a V. Strike. Strike. In reality, I would be striking for his hand. But in training, it kind of gets hard on your partner's hand, so we strike stick to stick. So the real technique is we would be striking for his hand. Now we go stick to stick so we can train practical like. And we have V to V, striking, 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 striking. The left hand is used for many reasons again. Now we're doing another favorite technique, what we call high-low. We're going high and then we go low. High, low. It can be used for a block or it can be used as a strike. Going high and then low, continuous. It's also circle, as you can see. As soon as I block my opponent's weapon, I want to strike down. I block, striking down. Now, it's good for both of us to train like this, blocking high and striking low. Or we can simulate we're striking them and low. Remember, this drill is strictly for reflex. Now, notice I get in different stances as I try this technique. High, low. Now we're going the opposite direction. These are drills that you should practice with your partner. High-low drill. Make it smooth. The next technique is known as the circle. Here, the umbrella. On this side, it's the circle. On the left side, since it's larger, we make a complete circle. We're using that hanger. For one split second, it becomes a hanger, or it becomes a left high fender, or a left middle fender, or a left low fender, just depending on how our opponent is striking at us. Make it natural. He strikes, that's a high left fender. And then we continue it. Then your partner does the same drill you're doing. Now we can both practice. Getting our fluidity. This is known as flow, being able to continue the motion over and over and over. The two escrimadores are very proficient. It looks very fluid. The drill is to help us to perfect our technique. Now we're doing it on the right side. It now becomes the umbrella. We went through this exercise before. Now we're going to practice an umbrella drill with our partner. He is going to do the same drill that you are doing. So as he strikes at you, he parries, strikes, parries, strikes, parries, strikes, over and over, and you continue the motion. Getting this fluidity, this flow, over, strike, over, strike, over, strike, and just repeat it. Make it natural. Notice how we're working that wrist action, each time protecting, coming up, counter-striking. Same time working our footwork. That's the object of this. Builds up our reflexes, our endurance, our stamina. This is what we call lunge and back stance. Lunge, now our back stance. Lunge, our back stance. In other words, it teaches me to counter and to get out of the way. He strikes, I get into a back stance, same time parrying the weapon, or pulling away from his weapon. Then I counter, trying to strike at him. He naturally trains the same way. Again, it is an exercise that will build up the inner thighs, build up our flexibility, and at the same time teaching us how to get away from our opponent and how to come back at him. Excellent exercise for the legs. Now we're going to practice the squat. He thrusts, I move into the squat position. Same time thrust into the front or slash into the front. Notice the techniques I'm using. I'm using plows, I'm using parries, I'm using hangers. I'm getting out of range of his, or pulling to the side of his weapon at the same time thrusting forward. I'm now going diagonally, right diagonally forward and left diagonally forward, using the left hand as a parry to parry his weapon. And at the same time I'm plowing at him, striking at him, using many different techniques. Everything in which you were taught earlier. There was a plow, there was a block strike, there was a hanger, there was an umbrella, there was an inside circle. Same thing. I'm now pulling to the left rear. Left rear. Same time I'm pulling a crescent and a C a while back there. Striking. Target of opportunity. Center of the chest, the groin. Wherever I have a chance. Using the back stance. Using that crescent again. Using the plow. Whatever comes naturally. Using a hanger. Switching hands. You learn to switch your hand. You don't throw it, you place it in there. Here I am blocking with the left hand and counter thrusting. Here, hanger. Here I'm going straight back now. Straight back. Blocking, pulling away from his weapon, at the same time counter striking. Again, excellent exercise to build the inner thighs, the legs, flexibility, agility. Flowing with my opponent. There I did just a while ago. There again, I just pulled what I call a spade back, like I was flipping dirt over my shoulder. A hanger. The plow. Plow. Spike up. Over and over. This is when you begin to understand Escrima, when you start flowing naturally, when you start moving in the 8 directions. Using nothing but basic techniques. Striking to whatever opportunity, whatever target area presents an opportune target. Now, looking at it from this direction, you can really see. Don't be afraid to lunge. Don't be afraid to move. Make a small target. Reach out there. Left front thrust. Left front I step slash. Left front slash. Left front. Over and over. Just be careful not to hit your partner in the face. Eye protection is recommended while doing some of these drills. Here I'm using the left hand, using it to check my opponent's weapon. Now I'm moving left back and parrying. Here I move to the right back, left diagonal, right diagonal, blocking and switching the weapon to my left hand, to the right hand, back and forth, blocking, natural flow. Now, the left hand can be used to block your opponent's hand weapon. I catch and try and catch his hand so he can't strike me. If he does, I pull to the side. I make a small target. My own hand becomes a small target. Watch. I catch his hand, I catch on the other side. So now if he tries to strike at me, it's hard for him to hit my hand or my body. In other words, I'm now in what we call the position of advantage. I use his left hand to defend against him. In other words, he has to cut his own hand or come across his own body to strike at me. Watch how I switch. Practice this exercise slowly and over. I can use my weapon to catch him, to throw him. In Escrima, we can use our feet, as you can just see. You can combine this with other martial arts. The stick can go between the legs, you can just see here again, to throw your opponent. Again, left hand to left hand, catch, bring him over, and move around. Bring your weapon in between his groin, drop him, and then strike. Here I meet my opponent, I catch his weapon, I bring my weapon over, I get a wrist lock, I take his weapon away from him, I now can strike him with his own weapon. We now go into double sticks. We'll be covering this tape later in tape number 2, how to use 2 sticks. But watch the fluidity. When I disarm my opponent, I now have 2 weapons, his own weapon and my own weapon. Try this disarm technique, but be very careful so you don't catch your opponent or break his wrist. Sometimes the wrist will lock, especially if he's not agile. This takes tremendous training and timing. Notice body English. We'll have to play this back several times to get that flow. Now, when he comes the other side, I bring my weapon around, I entwine his weapon, I release it and take it, and now I use 2 against him. The same thing, I leap toward his weapon, catch underneath, get a wrist lock. Notice the stances I move in. I go into the kneeling stance here. Kneeling stance, squat stance, crouch stance, many different techniques. Squat, diagonal squat. Same technique, it's over and over, perfecting and using both weapons. The more you practice, the more fluid it becomes. Now, here's a free drill. In other words, all I'm doing now is I'm doing what feels natural. I just grab a long baton and I just start playing with it. Literally playing with it to get some exercise. You can go through a free drill, or you can make your own drill up, whatever feels natural. Here I'm using the Cinquantero. I'm reversing it, going in 8 different directions, making it flow naturally. Striking as if opponents were coming from the rear to the sides. Here I'm doing the Cinquantero drill, preferred and non-preferred, horizontal and diagonal. Here I'm using vodding, or squat. Working the V, learning the fall, roll, getting up, switching the hand, learning how to switch. Have that flow, you just keep it moving. Going against many imaginary opponents, whatever feels right for you. This is the way to practice what is called the free drill. Now watch, when I switch hands, I actually place it in my hand. I don't throw it, I place it. And before I release the other hand, I actually am holding it. Every time I catch the weapon, I try and bring my hand as low as possible. Since this is a long baton, I cannot catch it directly to the end. But I try and move it, trying to use maximum weapon. Hand is open, exchange. Before I let go with the other one, I have already got a hold of it. It's gripped before I turn loose. Let that weapon reach out there. Go after your opponent, that imaginary opponent. Notice I bring it back to the left guard. It's coming back to these basic positions. A high left guard. The right hip. Overhead position. To the left hip. Left high guard. Right hip position. Right high guard. Left hip. Right high guard. Left high guard. Right low guard. Right hip position. Left high guard. Back and forth, those basic positions. The stance changes. It goes into the triangle. It goes into a forward stance. It goes into a parallel stance. Many different stances. Do what is natural for you. Where you can maneuver, where you can go left, right, forward, back. The left hand moves to the heart. It moves to deceive. It's like a squirrel's tail. It keeps you all balanced. It simulates blocking. It simulates grabbing. A high overhead guard. The power of the weapon can be seen and illustrated in slow motion. You can actually see this heavy piece of rattan bend right in the middle. This is velocity. This is where the power comes from. Notice how the hip, the shoulders, the wrist, the arm, all are united as one. The grip toward the end. Left hand. The same technique used over and over again. Simplicity. Practice well, the same techniques. Practice the 3 B's, basics, basics, basics. By using the 3 R's, repetition, 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 over, over, over. Put the power of the spirit, enthusiasm into anything you do and do it well. If you can't complete a drill like this, you just have to work at it until your endurance, your stamina builds up. Your arm has to build up. Everything has to build up. you'll be sore. If you're not in shape, you'll be sore. This is natural. You have to work those body muscles. Learn to fall at full speed. Try it slow on a mat. There are times when your opponent might throw you. You've got to be able to get up and defend yourself. Again, learn to switch that hand. In case you're wounded in one hand, you're still going to have to continue. Be proficient with the left as you are with the right. That's the one beautiful thing about Escrima. We switch over and over again. Left side is just as strong as our right side. Fluidity, fluidity. Using body momentum. Body English. Again, watch where that hand comes from. It'll be in those basic positions. Higher right, low left. Low right, high left. Center forward position. There it is. It goes those same basic positions because that's where the momentum comes from. That's where the power comes from. The fluidity. Don't try and strong-arm the weapon. Let the weapon go. Let it go its natural course. That's exactly what we're doing here. Let that weapon go. The weapon is part of you. You just bring it into play. Let the weapon take care of itself. Notice how the body, the momentum of the body, using body English. Let the natural course of the weapon go on its own. Sometimes using both hands. That's called a reinforced strike. Two hands, forcing it forward. This is known as a free drill. Now, there's times you're going to have to hit a target to see how you can do. Here I have a rubber dummy. You can do the same thing with a heavy dummy of any type. With your heavy bags. Practice on it over and over. Grip that thing. Strike. See how you can do. See if you lose the weapon. Flow when striking at your opponent. Or your target, flow with it. Left hand is used. Again, sometimes you notice I strike with the left hand, or simulate that I block with it. Go to all different parts of the target. Be proficient, from head to foot. Sometimes you strike with the butt, if he moves in on you. Most times you try and use the front of the weapon. The butt is used only when he moves in on you, where you're very, very, very close. Sparring. Sparring is nothing but the results of your training. To be very proficient in Escrima or Arnis, you must be able to do the basics. After you do the basics, then we call slow free fighting. In this case, the main emphasis is to flow. In other words, not really to go fast, but to flow. In this case here, my opponent is parrying with the hands with a stick. He's also using body English. Be very careful with this drill until you start getting proficient with it. In other words, use plastic bats or something very soft. You should also wear eye protection. None of this is rehearsed. What we're doing is we're doing what is natural and we're flowing into it. The left hand, again, is used to block parry, kneeling stances, squat stances. Watch the footwork, the arm work. Keep an eye on your opponent. Flow. That is known as the flow. Watch. Recovering. If you lose your balance, you learn to recover. Circle motions. This is one stage of Escrima. A second method is a little faster, or a lot faster. We now use plastic bats, and we now make our attack. Here, we're not afraid to strike at our opponent. Our hands are protected. We can now actually thrust, punch, or anything else. Now, for those of you who are not proficient, I would say head blows would be out, unless we're protected. So in this case, we're going after the body. Now, in Escrima and Arnis, one of our main target areas is the weapon hand. If I can disarm him, or if I can hit the weapon that holds the hand, 90% of the battle is over. So you're going to watch. In many cases, we are going to strike at each other's hand. Where other systems learn to strike at the body, the hand is the most important target in Escrima or Arnis. Again, you notice that the lead, the weapon hand, is normally to the front, so I can get maximum reach. The left hand is out in front where we can protect, or toward the heart, so I can parry. Better that you hit my hand than you hit my head or my body. That's why it is sometimes called the sacrifice hand. In other words, some people will sacrifice their hand to get a good shot in on you. It's the same thing like a game of chess. In other words, I'll take your rook and you take my pawn. Experiment. This is the time to experiment. You go through your basics and now you're experimenting. This is your laboratory. This is the place to try. Experiment over and over. If a certain technique doesn't work, it either means you haven't trained long enough in it, or else the technique is no good. When, we don't know. It's up to you. You've got to train over and over. I myself began in 1946 in the Filipino Martial Arts of Escrima. So some people become more proficient depending on time. This is now full contact Escrima. Kendo armor is used, or karate armor or other types of armor can be used. Striking areas can be different depending on whether it's a blade or a stick. The throat area is definitely an attack for either stick or blade. Here we have the do, or else what we call the whole chest area. Again, a blade would cut through it. Target areas are the elbow, the bicep, the forearm. Any area in this would disarm the weapon hand, which is exactly what we're trying to do. So that point, call it just as much as I would to the stomach area, since I have his weapon. The leg, if I can disable one of the legs, it's harder for my opponent to maneuver. Top of the skull, if I can come down with a good thing, good strike, whether it's a stick, I might break the neck, should it be for real. If it was with a blade, then I might cut him in two. The temple is always a good shot, whether you're using a stick or a blade. With a blade, the throat is preferred. The center, whether it's a stick or a blade, is always preferred. The solar plex is right there. Again, we're after that whole arm, any part of that arm, whether blade or stick. We're after the lower leg, or any part of that leg. Lower leg if it's a stick, upper leg if we have a blade. Now we salute our opponent. And we execute it. Left hand is our sacrifice hand, parry hand, or checking or deception hand. You can fake, you can go high, you can go low. Anytime you strike, you must have force. Notice where I put the hand. Here I have it in different positions. High upper right, low left Different position. Right now I have it toward the higher right or forward. They're changing back and forth here. Go to the target of opportunity. Go high, low. Here you notice I have the spike up, what is called the spike up. When you make a strike over there, the weapon is in the way. You experiment from these different positions. Here, overhead. High right, went to the leg. Thrust, thrust. Again, experiment. Don't be afraid to experiment. That's exactly what you're doing. Sometimes you take a shot. That's where you learn. Here I switched hands. Don't be afraid to switch hands. You might be wounded in one, you're going to have to switch. Feint. In other words, try like you're going to strike and then switch. Here I've got it in a high right position and it worked. Left high position. Experiment. Left high position, guard. Striking down. Thrust. And experiment. Try the lunge. Try the lunge. Now, naturally, before you have a contest, you have to say what weapon you have, either a blade or a stick. Now, in self-defense techniques, you're going to have to learn how to hold and pick up your weapon should you have lost it. In this case here, I'm trying to catch the weapon at the end of the stick. If I try and do this, it's very easy for my opponent to kick it out of the way, because I have a small area that I'm trying to catch. So what I should try and do is try and grab it in the center. Since I'm trying to grab it in the center, it's a lot easier to pick up the weapon. In other words, I've got a 50% chance of catching either end of the stick. So the thing to do is to catch the weapon in the middle. Now, once I get it out, I can use both ends to strike, and then I can move my hand as I'm striking at him until I get the full length of the weapon. Notice each time when I reach there, I always kept my eye on my opponent. Now, in Escrima, as in any other martial arts, you're going to have to learn how to fall. The reason for this is your opponent might catch you and throw you, or you might have lost your balance. So in this case here, I move my chin in toward my chest. I bring my hand down and I just roll. I try and get into a little ball. Again, we'll try this. Chin down, right hand down, roll over, and then I step back. Each time I step back, I'm leaving my weapon hand forward. And just go naturally. The more you practice, the easier it becomes. Then start picking up your speed. It's best to try this on the outside. Again, you want to recover your weapon, so try also to pick up your weapon. Try it on the grass, on the lawn, and carpeting. This is one of the reasons. If somebody should catch you and throw you, you've got to be able to defend yourself. You've got to be able to roll, come up, defend yourself. You notice the way I did that? I came up with a left fender. Again, he catches, he throws, you roll over, you're protecting. Try this several different times. Again, find a soft area, grassy area, or do it on a mat or carpeting. Then you can start picking up the momentum. Try to recover. Even on a slippery floor, you've got to be able to recover. There are times you might be on the deck and somebody attacks you. You're going to have to do the same thing. This is why we teach the kneeling position. Notice as soon as I move to a kneeling position. That way I can jump up. I can protect myself very easy in a kneeling position. Notice I go to a squat, to a crouch, and many other different positions here. Notice the first thing I do, since it's coming from overhead, I make a left fender or an overhead block. Go immediately to the kneeling position, and then I rise. Again, practice this and start working. You'll be surprised how fast you can get up if you get into a kneeling position first. Again, try it from all 8 directions. Here we're demonstrating against 4 different directions, but try it from any direction that an opponent might attack you. Many of these techniques look like they're advanced techniques. They are not advanced techniques, they are basic techniques. They just look very advanced. We repeat the same drills, same techniques over and over. Now I was in a kneeling position with both knees down. I want to raise one of them so I can maneuver, and that's the first thing. You notice I bring one knee forward. There are times when people will attack you with the leg or with kicks. Again, you learn to block to defend against these techniques. Notice I used a hanger there, same hanger to block. Same time I'm moving the body. Here I use my parry hand, block, catch, thrust. You have your partner attack you in many different techniques, whether punching, striking, or kicking, and you experiment, you try these. You'd be surprised how efficient the stick could be. Again, if you're a martial artist in karate or judo or jiu-jitsu, you can combine this with your own art, because Escrima gives you fluidity, tremendous speed. It teaches us to use those 8 directions. Here we use a diagonal squat. Here we use a back stance, going straight to target. Notice the reach that you have here. Tremendous reach with that stick. We can use a reinforced block. 2 hands against it, just like we did the baton. Knife against stick. The stick has the reach. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go toward the weapon hand. Notice the flow in this case here. We strike, we flow. In other words, I hit his hand, and with the same strike, I strike toward him. There's evasion. Multiple strikes. Hit the hand that holds the weapon, then go for other target areas. Use the flow. Natural positions. Block with that left hand and strike with the right. Same thing. Notice how it works. No wasted motion. Efficiency of motion. Notice the flow, the more natural position. Here, I strike, I block. Try these techniques over and over and over again. Umbrella, umbrella, umbrella. Going to the groin, over the head. No matter how he strikes at you, whatever direction, learn to block from all these different directions. Use the left hand. Combine kicks, punches, slaps. Especially when you have a stick against a short knife, use the reach of that stick. If he combines it with kicks and punches, the same thing. If he switches hands, it's the same. Whatever he attacks you with, it makes no difference what hand he's got the weapon in. You use it the same. He makes a move, and then you should be able to move. Now, forms. There are certain forms that you can make, or you can follow this form, and it teaches you basic techniques. Here we're doing a solo baton, a longer stick so that you can see it. Here we stand in a basic stance, parrying left, parrying right, and striking. Vertical strike. Here we're making diagonal strikes. Here we're using a horizontal, vertical cincoteros. Here we're using arrow cut, V cut. Here we interchange left hand, a reinforced strike. Using triangle stances. Now moving into a squat, umbrella, squat, using a circle. Using a V strike, V. Now moving in 8 directions, squat, squat right, slash, left diagonal, right diagonal, left rear, right rear, interchange hands, reinforced block. V, kneel, kneeling, kneeling to standing, kneeling to standing, going back, visualizing the opponent is attacking you from several different directions. Now we'll go through this form very slow. The salute, always a salute, any salute you want, as long as you show respect and go to a defensive position. Now I simulate parrying left and then striking at my opponent. Right, striking at my opponent. Left, counter striking. Same thing to the right. Your vertical cut, then a thrust. Here I make a diagonal return. Diagonal return. Notice my hand goes to those same basic positions. Left, high right, left high, and so forth. Left hand blocking. Here horizontal, vertical, vertical, thrust. This is cincoteros. Horizontal, horizontal, vertical, back, thrust. Striking to the groin, arrow cut. Twice. V, V. Arrow to the rear. V. Switching hands and moving to a back stance. Reinforce. A thrust. Switching the hand again. Vertical. Diagonal. Cincoteros. Now moving toward the left squat using an umbrella. Going back using another, which is called the circle. V strike. V strike. Squatting to the left. Squatting to the right, making slashes. A left diagonal, thrust. Right diagonal, slash, slash. Left rear, slash, slash, thrust. Right diagonal, switching the hand, thrusting with the left hand, reinforced. Now kneeling, making the cincoteros. Standing to kneeling, using the cincoteros. Standing to kneeling, the cincoteros, diagonal, and the thrust, the 5 cardinal blows. Striking down, thrusting. Then ending with a salute. Now we'll go to the basic interpretation of what we're doing here. Parry, strike. Parry to the right, strike. Parry to the left, strike. Parry to the right and strike. Vertical slash, slash, thrust. Any combination. Somebody attacks to the rear, we come up to a left fender, high. And now this is the cincoteros. The 5 cardinal strikes. Same thing, go over and over, as many times as you want it. Here's the thrust to the center. Here is a horizontal cinco terros, coming to the center of mass, coming up the groin, down the top of the head, and thrust. Here, same basic techniques, over. Watch where the hand goes, to the left high position, right thrusting position. Goes to these same basic positions. Using for blocking, stepping, striking, thrusting. Visualizing the move back. Same time I switch the hand, use a reinforced block and a reinforced thrust. When I switch hands, the weapon completely goes into my hand. I don't throw it there. Here we're learning to squat, moving off to the side, striking, slashing. The left front, again, slashing, thrusting. The right front, here we use the left fender, slash. Left rear, blocking down, slash, thrust. The right rear, switching hands, striking with the reinforce, and thrust with the same. Here we're using a right fender, now using the umbrella. Left fender, now we're using that circle strike, which is an umbrella on the left. Overhead, we're now moving into that cinco terros from the kneeling position to get underneath them. Learning it from the other side, the same thing, standing if we have to. And the salute for respect.